You're lying on the ground in a crowded place, something is clearly wrong. You need help, and people are walking past you. Not because they didn't notice, not because they didn't care at all, but because each individual brain is silently assuming something else is happening, someone else will handle it. And that assumption is exactly where the bystander effect begins. Because the most dangerous part of emergency situations in groups is not cruelty, it is diffusion of responsibility. When humans are alone, responsibility is simple. If you see someone in distress and nobody else is there, your brain assigns ownership to you. Action or inaction is clearly yours. But in a crowd, something changes. Responsibility spreads out like a signal losing strength across multiple receivers. The more people present, the less any single brain feels fully accountable, not consciously, automatically. This is not moral failure, it is cognitive architecture. In group settings, the brain continuously scans for social cues before acting. You look at faces, you observe reactions, you search for confirmation that action is required, and if nobody else appears alarmed, your brain interprets that as information. Maybe this is not an emergency. Even if the situation clearly is one, this is where pluralistic ignorance begins. Each person is privately uncertain, but publicly calm. So everyone looks at everyone else to decide how to behave. And because everyone is doing the same thing, the group collectively misreads the situation as non urgent. No one steps forward. Not because no one sees the problem, sure, but because everyone is waiting for someone else to define it. And time quietly passes. That's one of the most well known demonstrations of this effect came from research in the 1960s following the case of Kitty Genovese in New York, where reports suggested multiple witnesses failed to intervene during an attack. While later analyses clarified the details, the psychological principle still stood. Larger groups tend to reduce individual intervention rates in emergencies because the presence of others changes perception of responsibility more than perception of danger. Your brain is not asking, is this serious? It is asking, am I the one who should act? And in groups, that question becomes harder to answer. There's also another force operating beneath this evaluation anxiety. Humans are social creatures first and decision makers second. Before acting in public, the brain simulates how others will perceive that action. Will I be wrong? Will I overreact? Will I look foolish if this turns out to be nothing serious? In ambiguous situations, that risk feels surprisingly large, so the brain delays action to reduce social cost. A strange trade off occurs. Potential harm to another person is weighed against potential embarrassment to oneself. And because embarrassment is immediate and personal, while danger is uncertain and external, hesitation often wins. But the most powerful mechanism behind the bystander effect is not hesitation, it is normalization through observation. When you see other people calmly continuing their behavior, your brain uses them as a reality check. If everyone else appears unconcerned, your internal alarm system is automatically downgraded. This is social proof operating in real time. The group becomes a calibration device for individual perception. And if the group is miscalibrated, everyone inherits the same mistake. This is why emergencies in crowded spaces often rely on a single individual breaking the pattern. The first person who acts effectively collapses the ambiguity. Once one person moves with certainty, others can reinterpret the situation through that signal. Action becomes contagious only after it exists. Before that, it struggles to start. There's also a neurological layer to this that is often overlooked. Stress response systems are not designed for shared ambiguity. The brain prefers clear threat signals or clear safety signals, but in crowds, signals are mixed. Some people look concerned, some ignore the situation, some glance and look away. This creates what neuroscientists would describe as unstable threat classification. The brain cannot confidently label the situation as danger or non danger. And when classification is unstable, the system tends to freeze or delay response. Not because it is broken, because it is optimizing for error avoidance. Acting incorrectly in public carries immediate social consequences. Not acting in a real emergency carries delayed or uncertain consequences. In ambiguous group settings, the brain often defaults to minimizing immediate social risk. There's also a deeper structural issue. Responsibility becomes statistically diluted. If one person is present, responsibility is 100%. If five people are present, the brain unconsciously reduces perceived responsibility to a fraction, not mathematically, but psychologically. The mind distributes obligation across all available agents in the environment. This creates a paradox. The more people who are present, the less likely any single person is to intervene. And this is why emergencies in crowds can be more dangerous than isolated situations, even though help is physically closer. But the bystander effect is not just about emergencies. It shows something fundamental about human cognition. Humans are not purely individual decision systems, they are deeply influenced by perceived group behavior, even in critical moments. Your sense of what is appropriate is constantly shaped by what others appear to be doing. Most of the time, this is useful. It prevents unnecessary panic. It helps maintain social order. It reduces false alarms. But in rare situations where action is required and ambiguity exists, the same system becomes a delay mechanism. There's also an emotional suppression component. In groups, people often downregulate emotional intensity to match perceived social norms. If others appear calm, your emotional response softens to align with them. This prevents social disruption, but it also reduces urgency. So the brain is not only delaying action, it is actively recalibrating emotional intensity to match the environment. And in doing so, it can unintentionally flatten urgency when urgency is needed most. What makes the bystander effect particularly unsettling is that every individual involved may later believe they should have done something. But in the moment, each brain was operating under the same logic loop: uncertainty, social referencing, diffusion of responsibility, and hesitation under evaluation risk. So no single person owns the entire failure, but everyone participates in it. And this is the core contradiction. Human beings are capable of immediate empathy and rapid action, but only when responsibility is clearly assigned. When ambiguity enters through group presence, the system becomes distributed, and distributed systems are slower to initiate action. So the next time you think about why nobody helped in a crowded situation, the answer is not simple apathy. It is a collision between evolved social intelligence and modern group complexity. Each person waiting for someone else was not ignoring reality. They were trying to interpret it through other minds first.